This is one of the things that has kept our country so divided. If you think that your neighbors are racist, are you going to try to have a conversation with them? Of course not. But the reality is, and this is what I learned when I had a conversation with this Black Lives Matter activist, is that he doesn't think I'm a racist just because I'm white. He doesn't even understand what critical race training is. He admitted that to me off the air. And so if we have a large group of people who really don't understand this, who we think they're involved in this movement, who we perceive is all about this ideology, but it turns out that they really don't know what it is, well, that's an opportunity if I've ever seen one.
At a time of name-calling, intolerance, and ad hominem attacks, what can the average American do to overcome partisan division? In this episode, we sit down with Karlyn Borysenko, an organizational psychologist and longtime Democrat. She started exploring her political options after witnessing cancel culture in her knitting community, and chose to support Trump after he signed an executive order tackling critical race theory. This is American Thought Leaders, and I'm Jekielek. Karlyn Borysenko, so great to have you back on American Thought Leaders.
Thank you so much for having me.
Karlyn, it's been about a year since we spoke last, and I remember it was a very interesting time for you. You had been active in the knitting online community, I forget which one right now, and you experienced some kind of major pushback, cancel culture, and so forth, and you were out, exploring the political spectrum. And today, it's a year later, and I actually see one thing that is very much the same in your outlook in comparison to what we talked about a year ago. And this is the reason I reached out, which is the concept of bridging the divide. This actually was the one of the titles of our past interview. And I can see from your social media presence that you're very much active in trying to do that currently. So tell me a little bit about your journey here and what you're seeing and what you're trying to do.
Yeah, so we first met after I wrote an article about being a Democrat for 20 years that went to a Trump rally that went viral on the internet. And, the whole impetus for me going to the Trump rally was, of course, that I experienced cancel culture in the knitting community. And the article was really about just, we have to stop seeing each other as enemies. We have to start taking the time to listen to each other, to try to really understand people's perspectives and to really, connect on that human level. And of course, in the midst of the contentious election that was 2020, there just wasn't a lot of that going on. And I was making a proactive effort to try to break outside this liberal echo chamber I had created for myself, to listen to people who I really thought I would disagree with. And I ended up finding that I didn't have as much disagreement with people on the right as I initially thought. And so I started having those conversations, and, it kind of launched into a year of very public discussion on the topic. But, 2020 was a tough year in that when you're in the midst of an election, it's about your side winning. And I have to admit that I went from being someone that hated Donald Trump, that thought he was the worst person ever, to, really actively being one of the people that was out there doing rallies and trying to support his reelection efforts for several months. And when you're doing that, it's hard to have those conversations. But since the election, I've really tried to come back to it because I believe that it's very, very important where we are right now as a country, that we have to make the decision. Are we going to continue to stay divided, be at each other's throats, call each other horrible names all the time, or are we going to try to find the sane people that exist on both sides to try to reconnect and try to find some common ground and see where we can agree? And that's really what I've been working on in the past several weeks. And I've actually been reaching out to people on the left to try to have open conversations where people can see two people who disagree maybe on policy issues, but are trying to come together and at least find some common ground or minimally have respectful conversation.
Well, so this is actually very interesting. You described that, you went through this, I guess, political transformation or something like this. But I would guess that what interested you in MAGA or the whole Trump movement was the policies associated with it, not the personality associated with it. Otherwise, you probably wouldn't have been attracted to it from what you described. So I suspect there isn't a lot of understanding around that policy on the left. And I don't know if that's true, but that's my sense from looking at left-leaning media.
Well, I will say this. Once I really understood Donald Trump, someone said to me one day, they said, Karlyn, he is a blustery New Yorker. And for some reason that clicked something in my head and I was like, oh, now I completely understand him on a new level. So I actually did kind of enjoy the trolling of Donald Trump. I think there's a lot of humor in him. But I mean, at the same time, I do agree that what really got my attention were the policies. When I really became a Trump supporter, it was when he signed those executive orders banning critical race theory in the federal government and in all federal government contractors. This was something that actually happened right after we last chatted, which is critical race theory took over my entire industry. I'm an organizational psychologist. I do corporate training. And all of a sudden, the only thing that corporations wanted to invest money in was critical race training. And this is, we don't need to go far into that, but this is a fundamentally dangerous ideology that teaches people that they are racist based on the color of their skin. And so I was very much against that. And so to see Donald Trump being the only person to stand up and be fighting for average everyday people not to have to suffer through this training and then to want to institute policies that would teach children in school why America is an awesome country and why they are blessed and even, dare I say, privileged to live here, that was something that really did get my attention. And, looking at the types of policies he's endorsed, even right up until the very end when he out-lefted the left, calling for $2,000 checks for everyone when everyone else in Congress was perfectly fine with $600 checks. So yeah, I think there was a fundamental misunderstanding, not only about who he is as a person, but also the policies he was enacting. And I think that this actually can begin to give us a way to bridge the divide. I think that there is more in common between people on the populist left and the populist right than there is between people on the I define MAGA as really a populist right movement. I think that people on the populist right have more in common with people on the populist left than they do with the Republicans in Congress, and certainly then with the Democrats in Congress. The Republicans in Congress have shown they don't really care about average everyday people. They're simply out for themselves and doing what they can do to maintain power. And I think that is something that we can use to start to have these conversations.
Yeah, that's pretty fascinating. So what would you say are the uniting policies across the divide, so to speak?
I had a conversation on my YouTube channel last week with a Black Lives Matter activist. Now, I'm not talking about someone in the Black Lives Matter leadership structure or even someone that I think is monumentally influential in that movement, but just an average everyday person. And here's what I learned from this person that has been doing protests and rallies with Black Lives Matter for years and years and years and years and years. One, they do not like Antifa. They do not like the violence they see coming from the left. They think that dilutes their movement and they think it dilutes their message. I 100% agree. If we can align with average everyday people on the left on not liking Antifa and not liking violence, I think that's a huge win in and of itself, because I know for myself, I really conflated the two terms quite a bit. And I think a lot of people on the right do. We say Black Lives Matter and Antifa as though they're the same thing. And I just don't think that they necessarily are. The other things that I learned from him, I mean, maybe we can find common ground on, is that, listen, as an average person, I don't want to see the police killing innocent people. I don't think you do either. I think that there's not a single person out there that would say that that is a good thing. Now, where we disagree on is there a problem? Essentially, people on the right might say, oh, this isn't as big a problem as Black Lives Matter likes to say it is. But to be frank, whether or not it's a problem doesn't really matter if we agree on the goal, if we agree on the outcome that we're shooting for. So let's agree to the goal and move on from there. And I also think that there is something about, again, average everyday people that are in that movement that they feel like forgotten Americans. Donald Trump was successful because he rallied a movement of people who felt like they were forgotten Americans. Well, guess what? There's like the exact same set of people on the left who feel the same way. So why can't we come together on the things we agree upon and at least start there? Because the people that are currently in Congress are not at all interested in either of these groups. Joe Biden's already shown us that. He hasn't even talked to Black Lives Matter. So we have to take it upon ourselves to try to bridge that gap amongst ourselves to see if we can get any progress that is going to benefit both of our groups.
Karlyn, that's interesting. So Okay, I'll tell you what I'm thinking right now. I'm thinking that Black Lives Matter as an organization, I believe the leadership now, they are avowed Marxists, so to speak. I think that's, directly from the literature. And from what I can tell, there's a lot of support for precisely this critical race theory that you, I guess, switched political allegiance around. So there's probably a lot of people that just listen to you that are watching this show that are wondering, how can you say this?
hmm Yeah, absolutely. And if you had talked to me a month ago, I probably wouldn't be saying this, to be honest. But again, I think that we have to think about a few things. One, does the average everyday person on the left know what Marxism is, understand what the leadership of Black Lives Matter is doing, or are they just going along with the term and the general idea that the police shouldn't be shooting innocent people? We have to think about what do they actually care about? Where is actually their focus? I would bet you that if you talk to average everyday people, they A, don't know what the definition of Marxism is, B, don't know that the leaders of Black Lives Matter are Marxist, and C, don't even know what critical race theory is. I mean, I think if there's one thing that we saw in the campaign, it was that frankly, neither Joe Biden nor Donald Trump knew how to define critical race theory. We saw that clearly in the two debates that they had. And so do I expect average everyday people who don't have their heads in this all day like I do and you do to understand what it is? Well, no, I don't, because it's complicated. We need to start doing a better job of teaching people not only what these things are, but how they're showing up. But in the meantime, until everyone actually understands these concepts, there are things that we can agree on. And I really think that, again, like the leadership of Black Lives Matter, they have a vested interest in maintaining the problem. Right? Because if they don't maintain the problem, they're not going to get all these billions of dollars of donations from people to continue to support their organization. But the average everyday people, they just want solutions. That's all they want. They just want their kids to feel safe. And I want their kids to feel safe as well. So let's come together on that level. Ignore the leadership for a second. If the average people come together, that is a much, much, much larger group. And it doesn't really matter what the leaders want at that point. It's about what the people want.
So, Karlyn, while we were speaking offline, you actually mentioned to me that you were actually outside the Capitol buildings on January 6th that day. And you were talking about your experience of what happened, which is, quite different from essentially a lot of what we've heard in the legacy media and the corporate media.
Yeah, absolutely. So my experience of being at the Capitol on January 6th, and I have to do the preemptive compulsory disclaimer in that I denounce all violence. I do not think violence is a good thing. But when I got to the Capitol on January 6th, what I walked up to was a Capitol lawn filled with tens of thousands of people who it looked like just any other rally that I had been to. I'd been to dozens of rallies over the previous several months, and this really looked no different, except it was an awful lot bigger than any other rally I had been to. I saw people standing on the lawn peacefully, waving flags, chanting USA, USA, USA. As I got closer, I realized the Capitol Police were tear gassing people, and I really didn't understand why. But people that I saw were not engaging in violence. And none of this is to dismiss what happened in the Capitol. I thought what happened in the Capitol was horrible and grossly unnecessary. But it's also a tale of kind of two different experiences. And I think we see this on the Black Lives Matter end as well. Listen, I know there are people in Black Lives Matter that are doing bad things. We could all turn on the news for several months over the summer and see that there are people doing awful things, setting fires, destroying things, looting businesses. Those are not the people that I'm talking about. I'm talking about the 93% of people in Black Lives Matter that were actually peacefully protesting, that were just going out, standing up for what they believed in. The First Amendment protects them just as much as it protected me being at the Capitol and being completely peaceful and chanting USA, USA, USA along with that crowd. It protects both of us. If 99% of the people on January 6th at the Capitol were being completely peaceful and were just standing up for what they believed in, 93% on the Black Lives Matter side, yeah, it's a little bit less, but it's still pretty high. Let's work with it. That's still an awful lot of people who are just engaging in their First Amendment rights to peacefully protest for what they believe in. I can look at those percentages of people and say that there's a lot of reasonable people in those groups that do not want the fighting and the division and the rhetoric and the name calling and all of the things that we've had to endure for 4 years. Is it going to be everyone? No, there are extremists on both sides. on both sides of the equation. We've seen that now. But what I heard from the Black Lives Matter guy that I had the conversation with on my YouTube channel was when they look at groups like Antifa, they see it as QAnon on the left. That's what the average everyday person sees it as. They have their extremists, we have ours. We don't need to play this game where we're trying to bring the extremists into the conversation. Let the average everyday people talk and find those connections. Try to connect with them. Try to focus on what you agree with. Listen, everyone every day has a choice. We can either continue to focus on all the differences we have, all the things that drive us apart, all the things from the past couple of years that have driven us crazy about the other side. If we put all our focus there, well, guess what? That's going to make it seem like the only thing that there is are things that divide us. The only thing is that we can't agree on anything. But if we start to focus our energy instead on the things we have in common, that we want our families to feel safe, that we want to be able to stand up for causes we believe in without violence, that we want to be able to exercise our First Amendment rights, that we want to just feel like we are listened to by our elected representatives. Now, all of a sudden, we have some common ground that we can start to build on. And if we can find one commonality, well, who's to say we can't find 2, 3, or 4? But we have to be open to having the conversations in the first place.
Absolutely. And so what do you make, or maybe a better way to ask would be, how are you dealing with, very prominent punditry in corporate media, corporate left-leaning media, basically saying things like conflating the idea of people that actually entered the Capitol, committed violence, with, I guess, the people that were there, like you on the lawn, and then further up, all the way up to people who just happened to vote for President Trump. I mean, we're seeing a lot of that kind of rhetoric, at least by my eye.
How I'm dealing with that, to be quite frank with you, is I'm trying my very best to ignore it. Because the media does not speak for the people. The media has a vested interest in trying to keep us divided. They made a boat ton of money for years and years and years with Donald Trump as president. And now all of a sudden their cash cow is in Florida golfing. So they've got to try to find a way to maintain that revenue stream from somewhere, right? They have a vested interest in keeping us divided. Now, is it really inconvenient that Twitter is purging hundreds of thousands of accounts and that people are getting canceled left and right and that Parler has been taken offline and all of these things? Yes, absolutely, that's inconvenient. But guess what? We still have places that we can congregate. We still have places that we can talk. I'm on Locals. Locals has been a great website for me that I feel completely safe not being banned or censored on. And that's a place where I'm able to create communities where we are having conversations among people who disagree with each other. And it can still work. And so my best advice is that ignore the media. Listen, we've seen that the trustworthiness in the media has absolutely tanked. Especially since the election, people know that they're lying to us. And I actually see a beautiful opportunity in all of this. I see, and we're already starting to see it. We're like a week into Joe Biden's presidency at this point. We're already starting to see that people who voted for Biden are waking up to the fact that not only did Joe Biden lie to them, but that the media covered for him. And I think we're only going to see more red pills dished out in the course of Biden's presidency. What a beautiful gift we've all been given to have a chance to wake up to say, okay, the people in Congress largely are not fighting for us. The media are corporate shills. Now, all we really have left to rely on is each other, right? But we have to, again, be open to having those conversations with each other if we're ever going to get anywhere.
How do you start that conversation?
That's the biggest question of all, isn't it? Like, how do I do it? I think you just have to make the decision to do it. You have to make the decision that you are going to open your mind and listen to someone that you disagree with. Now, just because you have a conversation with someone doesn't mean you have to change your mind. It doesn't mean you have to change your values. It's simply that you are creating a space for a dialogue to occur. You are creating space for a gap to be bridged, right? When I had my conversation, and I actually have people from the left as much as possible on my YouTube channel where we dialogue and we talk about where we agree and where we disagree. Where I start with that is, I ask them to have the conversation. I say, if you come on my channel, I'm going to give you time to talk. I'm not going to debate you. I'm going to listen to you. I'm going to ask you questions. You're going to get a chance to articulate your message. This is not a fight. And I think this is where a lot of people get caught up in. They want to have a debate. I mean, this happens all the time on the internet. It's all about debates, debates, debates. Well, I am not interested at all in having debates. I'm not interested at all in convincing someone on the left to agree with me when we probably don't agree on an awful lot. That only focuses in on the areas that we disagree on. What I would rather do is get them on my channel, ask them questions, give them a chance to share their full message, and then ask them some more questions and say, oh, you know what, that point there, we agree with that. We have that in common. I'll give you an example. I mean, the Black Lives Matter guy I had on my channel last week, we talked about the fact that we both hate Mitch McConnell. We hate Mitch McConnell. Okay, well, we found some common ground there. Let's build on that. Or we talked about the fact that we do believe in the First Amendment. We do believe in the right to peacefully protest. Well, let's go from there. Again, once you can find one area that you have something in common with them, that opens the door to more. And I think the fact that when I go into these conversations, I'm not trying to dunk on someone. I'm not trying to score points. I'm not trying to make them look bad. In fact, I want them to look good. I want them to look great when they're on my channel, because that's going to make them feel really good. And that's going to make them be more inclined to engage with me in the future.
Okay, so how do you deal with the fact that, well, let's take an example of an obvious falsehood. I think you're familiar with the find people hoax, right?
Yes.
In quotes, right, exactly. So that's something that a lot of people on the left may believe because by sheer virtue of repetition, it was involved in part of a campaign. And they might just simply believe that that's factual. You know, it's not. So it's not. How do you deal with people having very different I guess, knowledge, core knowledge about what is real and what isn't real?
Mm-hmm. To be honest with you, in some respects, I find it to be immaterial. I find the very fine people hoax to be immaterial, and I'm going to explain why. Because we don't need to agree about whether or not that happened in order to find common ground moving forward. Listen, we cannot change the last 4 years. We can't change anything that was said. We can't change anything that was done. And if we focus all our energy on trying to right all the perceived wrongs over the last 4 years, we are going to miss opportunities to move forward. And that's what we have to keep doing. We can't change things. Instead, we have to focus on what we want to build, what type of experience we want to have. And that's true regardless of whether the very fine people thing happened or it didn't. I really have no interest in relitigating everything that's happened and how many lies the media has told over the last 4 years. What I would prefer to do is to point out very clear inconsistencies that are happening right now, this week. They said this before Biden was inaugurated. They said this right after he was inaugurated. What do you think about that? What is your interpretation of that? And how would you prefer they behave moving forward? That's where I think we're going to be able to have the most productive conversations if we focus on the future rather than the past.
Do you find people are trying to cancel you even as we speak?
Oh, yes. People try to cancel me all day, every day, but I'm actually very blessed in that I had a lot of people try to cancel me in the last year. Now, it might sound odd to say that I'm very blessed with that, but every time they tried to cancel me, I had to figure out ways to diversify what I was doing and to set up systems where they couldn't cancel me. And so I've been through the fire at this point. I feel completely comfortable with where I'm at. I feel completely comfortable that they are not going to be able to cancel all of my sources of income, no matter how hard they might try. And it's part of this little game that we're playing. I'm happy to take the heat if we can get to a point where we are able to have conversations with each other. And even if I have to model that behavior of what that looks like on my YouTube channel or wherever else, I'm happy to do that because I think that that's important.
So a lot of folks, especially on the conservative side, are, I guess, very shy about their opinions, and especially after the events of January 6th. I think one of the reactions that I've seen is people feel almost apologetic, for something that, they may have obviously had nothing to do with by and large, but that's the reality of a lot of people. What do you say to those people?
Well, I say to them that I completely understand. Listen, as January 6th was happening, literally as I was at the Capitol, and I did not even have good internet connection. So again, I didn't know what was going on. I had people from all different stages of my life actually denouncing me on the internet just for being at the Capitol. Like I went back later and I saw someone I hadn't talked to in 6 months was all of a sudden denouncing me on the internet as a horrible person. And so, I mean, I completely understand what they're feeling. I mean, I kind of feel the same way. I have such regret that I didn't push people to see that the QAnon hoax was a hoax. It was not real. And I never pushed people on that. And I know a lot of other people didn't either because it created so many problems when you tried to have those conversations. So I think we can look back and regret, or we can look back and learn. And I certainly had a little bit of regret for a while after that. I felt bad. I felt like I did something wrong when I didn't really think that that maybe I should. I thought that maybe I shouldn't have gone. But the reality is this: what happened happened. There's nothing that we can do about it. All we can do is move forward. At the end of the day, I know I was there expressing my First Amendment right to peacefully protest. I know I didn't engage in any of the violence. I know I didn't go into the Capitol building. And so I did nothing wrong. And I don't think it serves either side. What the Democrats are doing right now in continuing to vilify the 74 million people who voted for Donald Trump and going through with this absurd impeachment hearing, what they're showing us is they are not interested in unity. They are not interested in anything that Joe Biden says about unity or bringing the sides together. They are actively trying, I think they're actively trying to create a civil war in this country. And that's frankly all the more reason for reasonable people to come together. I know I keep hitting on this point, but we cannot trust our elected leaders to do this for us. Our elected leaders are hunkered down. They're dug in. They're going to continue to fight. They have shown us this over and over and over again. If we want a country where we are not at each other's throats, we have to take that into our own hands and do what we can to make that happen.
There's a lot of people saying they want unity. You're suggesting they're not really wanting unity. What would the policies that would encourage actual unity look like?
I think that really, off the cuff, I would say that there are two very important things that need to happen if Joe Biden and the Democrats actually want unity and want to demonstrate it through their actions. Number one, the sham impeachment trial in the Senate needs to be stopped. The whole goal of an impeachment trial is to remove someone from office. Donald Trump has already left office. The only thing that this impeachment trial is going to accomplish is it's going to piss off 74 million American people. That's it. That's the only goal. So that needs to be stopped. And frankly, Joe Biden should have already stopped it. If Joe Biden was serious about unity, he should have called Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi and said, no, this ends now. But the next thing that needs to happen is people on the left need to start denouncing the violence that comes from the extreme left wing of their party. Listen, on Inauguration Day, we saw Antifa destroy the Democratic Party headquarters in Portland, Oregon. Why hasn't that been covered anywhere? Why hasn't that been denounced? They've been marching in Seattle. They've been marching in Tacoma. That needs to be denounced clearly from the left. And if those two things don't happen, I don't trust at all that the Democratic Party is serious about the idea of unity.
So, Karlyn, there's a lot of people in the country right now who feel, I'm certain, very disillusioned, frankly, very negative, may not be ready to accept your message right now. What do you say to them?
Well, I would say, listen, how I got into all of this is before I was involved in politics and culture and all that, I was doing mindfulness training in the workplace. And so let's infuse a little mindfulness principle into this. Every moment of every day, we're making a decision about the type of person we want to be and the type of experience we want to have. And our actions and our inner dialogue have to follow that decision if it has any hope of actually becoming reality. So if I want a country where I'm not at the throat of my neighbor, I need to start acting like it. And the first step to that is believing that success is possible. If you listen to the media all day, or if you're on Twitter or anywhere else, you're going to run into a lot of people who tell you that success is not possible. But usually those people have a vested interest in convincing you that success is not possible. They have a vested interest in continuing for you to be outraged. That's literally how they make their money. All right. I don't make my money that way. I make my money by helping people to express themselves in an empowered way. And so I want to choose to believe that it is possible to exist in a world where we are able to have our opinions, we are able to disagree, we are able to have conversations with our neighbors. And I'm going to act like that's possible. Now, I understand fully why a lot of people are disillusioned at this point, and that's true on both the left and the right. There are a lot of people on both sides that feel that their needs have not been listened to, their voices have not been listened to, and their complaints are completely valid. But we have to start putting the past behind us. We have to start thinking about how we want to move forward and what we as individuals are going to do to make that happen. No one is going to come and save you. Your elected representatives are not going to come and save you. The people on the news are not going to come and save you. You have to do it for yourself. And so if you need a little time out to take a break and decompress after what was a really, really trying election, I completely understand that. Go take a vacation, go drink some little drinks with umbrellas on the beach, go relax and unwind. I completely understand that. But when you come back with the belief that good things are possible and that we can turn this around. We have a decision to make as a country. Do we want to be one united country, or do we want to actively descend towards civil war? I've never been a big fan of war myself. It's part of why I actually like Donald Trump so much. First president in like 4 decades not to start a new war, right? And so I'm not about to act as though I want a new civil war to break out in the United States. I want there to be peace. I want people to be able to coexist with people that disagree. And so that's how I'm going to act.
So, part of the reason for the disillusionment, and I think that this exists in both the left and the right, as you describe it on both sides, is that, you talked about, your appreciation of, removing critical race theory from the federal workplaces and so forth. Of course, that is coming back now from what I understand from the executive orders. You also probably understand that folks who are ideologically, aligned with this approach of quote-unquote wokeness, that believe in critical race theory, they don't see compromise as an option.
Well, if we're looking at organizations specifically, what I have to hope is that organizational leaders are going to see that this training does not work. I mean, bottom line, from a business perspective, you're going to invest tens of thousands or even hundreds of thousands of dollars in this training, depending on the size of your organization. You're going to want to see some quantifiable business results. Does it actually get my team to work better with other people? And every data point that I've seen about critical race theory training specifically is that it does exactly the opposite. And in fact, it doesn't serve the broader purpose that we've been talking about either, in terms of bringing people together. In organizations, what critical race theory training does is it destroys psychological safety. That's basically a fancy word for trust within the organization. You want people to be able to trust their colleagues, to be able to talk to their colleagues, to be able to communicate, collaborate, do all those things that are foundational to achieving business success. When you teach people to call your colleagues out on their inherent racism all day, every day, to call them out for forgetting to CC someone on their email or not invite someone to a meeting by accident, when you teach them that those actions are racist actions and that they're committing microaggressions against their employers and reporting them to HR for it, you are going to destroy any hope of team cohesion in organizations. And so my hope is that now, after we've had a year of this training and organizations are starting to see that it does more harm than good, that's going to be enough of a business case for CEOs and leaders to stop investing in it. Listen, we don't have Donald Trump's executive orders to hide behind anymore. Now we have to help people to really understand what this training does and why it's so negative. And that is actually one of the things that I am working on my channel. I'm also going to be launching a new project pretty soon, specifically around helping people to really grasp what this is on a very human level. But I mean, more broadly speaking too, this is one of the things that has kept our country so divided. If you think that your neighbors are racist, are you going to try to have a conversation with them? Of course not. But the reality is, and this is what I learned when I had a conversation with this Black Lives Matter activist, is that he doesn't think I'm a racist just because I'm white. He doesn't even understand what critical race training is. He admitted that to me off the air. And so if we have a large group of people who really don't understand this, who we think they're involved in this movement, who we perceive is all about this ideology, but it turns out that they really don't know what it is, well, that's an opportunity if I've ever seen one.
So, Karlyn, one of the big questions that I think is on a lot of people's minds, certainly it is on my mind, is mainstream or legacy corporate media ostensibly looking like they're working together with big tech, working with a very particular ideological framework, and this kind of sheer unprecedented power of that. You know, how can conservatives or people of a different ideological framework compete with that, deal with that?
Well, I think the reality is that we see, and this is actually something that they've been complaining about lately, we see that there are channels on YouTube that get more views every single day than daytime CNN does. So is corporate media large? Yes, of course it is. But is it insurmountable? Of course not. And the fact is that in order to start a movement, we don't need the entire population. We don't even need a large percentage of the population. We just need a small percentage of people who are willing to try. And guess what? Then every single one of those people can recruit a friend to the cause, and then they can all recruit a friend. And all of a sudden, we have a movement of people who are saying, I don't want the media controlling this any longer. I don't want the media who has a vested interest in keeping people outraged, keeping people angry, keeping these divisions sown. I don't want them to be driving this conversation. We need to be driving this conversation. So if you always focus your energy on all the things you have working against you, guess what? You only build obstacles in your own way towards getting what you want. If you focus instead on what can I do right now? Can I have this conversation? Can I reach out to a neighbor? Can I maybe start my own YouTube channel and start having these conversations among people I disagree with? If you focus on what you can do, that's going to be a lot better use of your time. Is it going to change the world overnight? No. But we've got a long time to be able to figure this out.
So, Karlyn, this is kind of exactly as we finish up what I want to get back to. We discussed a little bit about how to get folks which definitely perceive themselves on different sides of the political equation to be talking to each other and find commonalities. You know, you were mentioning specifically getting people who believe in the idea of Black Lives Matter, right? Of course, it's Black Lives obviously matter. It's a truism, yes. And MAGA, Make America Great Again, a lot of people believe that this is a virtue, irrespective of personalities and so forth. How do you intend to create that opportunity for those people to start talking to each other who really haven't been for such a long time?
You know, I had an interesting comment on my YouTube channel when I had the conversation with the BLM activist, and it was someone who said, you know, I've been to a bunch of Trump rallies, and, you know, we tend to see that Black Lives Matter people, they sometimes show up and they walk through the crowd saying Black Lives Matter. And when they do that, what I answer is, of course they do. Of course they do. It's not that they don't have different values in this regard. And again, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to continue trying to have conversations with people on the left in public, unedited, where people can actually come and watch us have this conversation, come and watch us interact, come and see how it works. If we can provide an example of two sets of people with differing ideologies on some points coming together to have a productive conversation, that can provide a model for how other people can do it too. I am not special. I am not a unique and magical snowflake where I am the only one that can have conversations with people that I disagree with. Anyone can do this. And so what I've been doing recently is I've been reaching out to a lot of people on the left to invite them to come on my YouTube channel and have a conversation. I've actually gotten really positive responses from it. And when I say to them, I think MAGA and BLM have more in common than they don't, you know what they tell me? They say, I think you're right. And this is a path that we need to go down, because the reality is that, again, Joe Biden is just a week into his presidency, but Black Lives Matter does not feel listened to by him so far. And so we do have common ground that we can build on right now. So I intend to be a model going forward of what that looks like to the very best of my abilities.
Karlyn Borysenko, such a pleasure to have you on again.
Thank you so much.